Husker fans, back this week for the Big Six podcast. Hello, everybody. Along with the heavy hitter Tom Shatel and the silver tongue over here, Evan Bland. This is Sam McKewon talking about Husker sports this week. Obviously, Husker football at the top of our list. We are now 9 days out from the season opener. That'll be lots of fun to go up to Minnesota. We're 8 days out from the volleyball day in Nebraska. We will talk a little bit of Husker volleyball, just previewing the season, which, yes, does actually go past August 30th. So they'll have a season to play after they fill Memorial Stadium, and we'll talk about that season, which is enormously important. Going to go over Big Ten West stuff today. Talk about the league, the division, the Big Ten West, what's going to happen there. Obviously, we can talk a little bit about the Big Ten East as well. And then next week we'll fully preview the Nebraska-Minnesota game and go there next Tuesday. So we're much closer than it feels like to a football game, doesn't it? It doesn't really feel like we're 9 days away. And then we'll talk a little bit of first thing we'll have off the top is Ted Carter leaving Nebraska and what that means for Nebraska athletics. We'll start there here in a second. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Omaha World-Herald. Today is August someday. What is it, 22nd, 23rd? This will take you all the way through the end of February. If you get 6 months for $1, you get all the Huskers, all the Jays. We know that there's some J-skers that listen to this because they're Creighton basketball and Husker football fans. All the preps, all of it. You'll get all the good stuff from Tom and Evan and Stu and PAT and all of our team. Subscribe at www.omaha.com/subscribe. Okay, let's start here. News yesterday out of Memorial Stadium, or I guess out of, what do you call it, East Campus, Varner Hall. Ted Carter leaves the University of Nebraska system where he was president to become the president of Ohio State, which is kind of like the chancellor at UNL. So he's the president of Ohio State University. That doesn't mean that he's traveling all over the state of Ohio, but he is the president of that specific university. Tom, you wrote a really good analysis of what this means for Nebraska athletics, and it does mean something, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's ordinarily if you lose a president, and I'm not sure the average fan can even tell you who the other guys were. It's not that big a deal. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was, 80s. I mean, it was. They had somebody, but it was like, you had Devaney and Osborne, and the administration did what they said. Now, over the years, the last 20 years, it's been really dysfunctional, and part of that is the administration and the ADs and the coaches have not all been on the same page. Now, for a while, you had the Harvey era with Eichhorst. They were together, but the football coach wasn't. So you had different. Then you had Hank Bounce coming in and Eichhorst, butting heads, and it's just the feel right now is that everything. There's a symmetry to everything right now. Everything is they're all together. They're all side by side, all going in the right direction, and. I believe Ted Carter was the reason for that, and he's certainly the big reason why Trev Alberts came back and why Matt Rule's here. These coaches pay attention to this. If they get any inkling that there's trouble in the administration or that things are going to be hard or things they ask for aren't going to be delivered, that's a problem. As a giant red flag for coaches. Well, that doesn't mean anybody's leaving, but they need to replace Ted Carter well. They need to do it smartly. I know people think, well, your sports is, wagging the dog and the sports is in charge. Well, if you don't think that a successful sports operation or football or basketball, winning football or basketball, impacts enrollment and overall fundraising university.
Yes, agreed. Yes.
I invite you to go down to 24th Street in Omaha and ask everybody at the Creighton Blue Jay complex how that works, how Dana Altman and Greg McDermott have basically, not single-handedly, but they've certainly, and their boss, Bruce Rasmussen, changed that campus, changed that university. The money's flowing in, enrollment's up, and it's good big at winning basketball. Winning sports matters big, especially in this state. So the next hire should be, and I would be happy if they had Ted Carter on like a search committee, or at least as like a consultant. Who do you like? Who do you think could be a good fit here? Because sports matters big, and you want to keep the AD and football coach happy.
Well, and you think, too, I mean, how blindsided the university was. I mean, 2 months ago, they restructured things so that Ted Carter, the president, had oversight over Husker athletics and not the chancellor.
You just never know. And, Ted is from back east, Naval Academy, all the way up. And so he's a guy who could go anywhere. Ohio State's different. I know people don't like people leaving Nebraska to go places. This is supposed to be the destination place, but Ohio State's different, and it's Nebraska on a grander scale in terms of the academics, the campus, the sports. It's everything. So it's more prestige. Was it more money? I guess probably, but. It's just it's a different level job, and Ted never intended to be a normal school president. He was happy. He was on the fast track to be he was going to retire, fast track to retirement in the Navy, and the Nebraska called him and said, "Hey, what are you thinking?" This was a sort of a out of left field job for him. He never considered being a president of a major university that was not Navy or any kind of educational academia world that was not Navy. So he must have liked it. He must have got here and said, "Hey, I can do good work here. I can make a difference." And so he, I think he was going to come here and just kind of retire, but I think he liked it. And I think he saw he could do good things, and he likes being in the mix. The Big Ten, President's Room, NCAA. Is this a guy who could be Big Ten commissioner? Somebody asked me that. I said, well, maybe about 10 years ago, but right now it's such a TV world. I don't know, but he could be the NCAA president easily. I think so. He's always been ambitious. He's always he doesn't chase money, but he chases impact, and it's a place where he'll have big impact.
Invariably, Nebraska has to replace him at president. This is speculation, so it's not designed to suggest I know something. The chancellor at the University of Tennessee spent 9 years at Nebraska before she went back down there to be the chancellor, Donde Plowman. That would be an interesting option for sure. Somebody mentioned to me today, and I don't think this is an option, but Ben Sass has taken over the University of Florida system very recently. The University of Nebraska job wasn't open when Ben Sass decided to walk away from the U.S. Senate. He's now at Florida. I expect him to stay there, but obviously I think that's a phone call that you could, in theory, make. Sass spent a lifetime in education. A name that I also thought of was Trev Alberts. I don't think that's impossible. I don't think it's likely. I think he loves athletics too much, but I say that as a sign of respect to Alberts. I think he could actually do the job and actually be pretty good at it. But the real question is, Ted Carter has to hire an athletic director. Gene Smith is retiring. He's in his last year. One of the best athletic directors in a lot of ways. Did a lot for Ohio State. Helped the Big Ten out. I'll be really honest. I think he played a huge role in getting football back in 2020. Maybe the key role. Mm-hmm. But he's retiring, and well, deservedly so. Ted Carter's got to hire a replacement. He could probably hire anybody. I mean, who doesn't want to be the AD at Ohio State? but how important is it that Trev Alberts remain the AD at Nebraska?
Well, it's absolutely crucial. It would be devastating to lose him right now, I think.
And I don't think they're going to lose him.
No, I don't either. I think there's too much at stake here. Nebraska football means too much to him. For him to go to a place like Ohio State right now and be in the same league and have to come back and face everybody.
Right.
But again, I think Nebraska football, the bottom, not all that aside, Nebraska football means everything to him, and he's got it in a really good place. He'll want to see that through. Not to mention the other sports as well. Now this doesn't have to be that big of a deal if they make the right hire. Everything can just keep going the way it is. Some of the names you mentioned, you just need to get somebody that is not necessarily going to come in and say, I've got to remake everything in my image, in my mind, sort of a Steve Peterson move, which caught everybody by surprise, by the way, when he did that. Maybe somebody out there saw it coming, but nobody I know did. And so you really don't have to go out. You can go out and get a academia type, and as long as they understand sports and they get the dynamic in Nebraska, and I think I wonder if old Trev knows somebody. I wonder in his years at UNO and maybe the last few years here, he's got connections everywhere.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe he knows somebody that he's got a relationship with who might do that. So, frankly, the chancellor has kind of been that person at Nebraska who was over sports. I mean, Harvey Perlman for years was the hands-on. I mean, he did this, hire Peterson, fire Solich, blah, blah, on down the line.
He was on the college football, the NCAA college football committee.
So this is the chancellor. I don't know the new chancellor well enough, but my hunch is I don't know that he's a big sports guy, and he's going to ease into it.
He said in an interview yesterday he would like to oversee it.
Well,
he said, I have the knowledge and the breadth to do it if that's what they would like me to do.
Okay.
That's all he said.
I'd like to see more out of him first.
Yeah. But he kind of said it in the interview. He's like, he wasn't afraid of it.
But it's got to be, he's got to get in lockstep with everybody else. He's got to make sure they're all on the same page. If he's going to try to come in and be over sports and do it his way, then, then all of a sudden it becomes a house of cards again. So right now it's pretty strong, I think. So, we'll see. But I think I don't see Trev going. Ohio State. I don't see him. I think maybe it means too much here. It would be an unbelievable explanation for him to do that, and I don't see him doing it.
I agree with you. I do think you got to make sure you take care of him financially and give him what he needs, the resources they need. Most people and everybody sitting around this table already knows this, but what he entered into when he became the athletic director is not what someone will enter into when they go to Ohio State. Ohio State's a finished product. Gene Smith's going to leave it in good shape. When Trev Alberts came to Nebraska, he took over a bunch of contracts that had just been extended literally weeks before that he had to get himself out of, and he took over a mess. I mean, he took over a complete mess. And they have spent 2 years trying to clean it up, including in football. And so he's done a lot, and he's done a lot behind the scenes that people just don't know about because it was more dysfunctional than people realize.
I think right now, Sam, the best thing you can give Trev is more trust, and I think he already has the vice chancellor title, right? I think in Nebraska he had
that at UNO.
See that to me was UNO saying, okay, we trust you to run athletics. And you're sort of the administration's liaison, or what you're part of the administration, but you're over athletics. So whatever you want, go do it. And does Nebraska need to do that here?
He is a vice chancellor. You're right.
Okay. So I mean, do they need to say, okay, you're not the chancellor or president, but maybe you're the guy overseeing athletics in the administration.
Yeah.
And maybe you and the regents are together. Maybe it's not the president. That sounds crazy, but I think you've got to make sure that he's the guy driving the bus and not the president in terms of athletics.
I think you're completely right. That role has completely changed. I think you're that person. I'm not trying to disparage Frank Broyles or Vince Dooley or Bob Devaney or Bo Schembechler or any of those guys. Those are legends.
Yeah, right.
However, the role is no longer former football coach who then goes down to the office and pats all the coaches on the back. It is a completely different thing now. And your administrators, your athletic directors are functionally elite level administrators who probably can work directly with the regents. Like, there would have been a day many years ago, 1987, when Bob Devaney's boss was, I don't even know, Martin Massengill, I don't know. But Bob probably needed a boss on some fronts with the finances or whatever. That wouldn't be true now. And so, I think that's a really good point, that Trev can probably just work directly with the regents. Okay, well, that news broke. We're still really close to the season. We're at that moment. I want to talk a little bit about the offense with both of you. We talked about the defense last week because I think the offense is interesting, and we've heard quite a bit, I feel like, in the last however many days, from Matt Rule about the offense, then Marcus Satterfield about the offense. I think we have a pretty good idea of what they think, not what they know, because what they know is going to be seen on August 31st. But Evan, based on the comments that we've gotten from Rule and Satterfield and players, what do you think this offense is going to do well?
I think they can run the ball well. I don't know, like you said, how that'll manifest on the 31st. They've been, in a lot of ways, they've been pretty, I don't know if coy is the right word, but just kind of generally vague about it. I mean, we've heard a lot about the positionless offense, and guys like Janarin Bonner can line up in 4 different spots, and the merits of Alex Bullock and Ty Hahn and Marcus Washington hasn't been back. So, we've heard just kind of vagaries, I feel like, not a ton of concrete ideas of what it's going to be. And so I'm really interested to see. I think it's one of the great mystery games in recent Husker history going in. We just don't know. We don't know who's going to line up in that first offensive set. I think we know who the quarterback's going to be. We have a pretty good idea who the offensive line's going to be. It'll probably be Gabe Irvin taking that first handoff based on what Matt Rule has said.
For sure.
But, yeah, how they go about it conceptually, I don't know. What kind of effectiveness they have on 3rd and 4. Do they have the confidence to run the ball in that situation? I feel like one of the early tests of their confidence is going to be how often Jeff Sims runs the ball, right? It's one thing to have a plan and say we like these receivers and we like this line and we like these running backs, but if it's 3rd and 4 and you don't ultimately trust those guys, or they haven't maybe gotten the job done in the first couple quarters, do you lean on Sims the way that we've seen Nebraska lean on mobile quarterbacks so often?
I think it'll depend on the game. I see 4 home games where you shouldn't need that, and I say that not knowing what they have. But I see other games where you're going to need ace in the hole, you're going to need a curveball, and a good running quarterback, a guy who knows how to get yards and bull through situations and hit the edge and make people miss. That's a guy that not a lot of people have, and they don't see him on defense. So I feel like that's the thing that, look, they got to get through this first year. They can't, we don't want to get them hurt. You're not. This is to me the story of the whole first season is the balance between the future and the build and winning right now, and how many young guys play. How much do you run the quarterback? If he gets hurt, okay, you might take a step back. What happens then? Go to a bowl game. It's all a balance. You've got to manage this offense. And I don't know what they have. None of the game of us really know what they have. What's your strength? But I worry a little bit, maybe wonder is a better word, about the big play. Last year's offense was it was all about the big play.
It was.
Whenever they won a game, whenever they were they go West Lafayette, and they're right there at the end against Aiden O'Connell. It's because of the big play. They couldn't stop Trey Palmer. I don't know if they don't have that guy, do they? Do they have Casey Thompson? They have a guy who's going to make the big play, and that's what we don't know right now. And I think this could be a grinder offense, and that's okay. Help the defense step the field a little bit. Play. I just wonder, what do they have? And we'll find out as we go. But the big play factor to me is something to watch.
Agreed. I went back and watched some Temple games because Rule was a coach there, and it feels like this offense is going to be a little bit like that. And they try to run the ball a lot. They would throw it off of the run, and they try to win in fourth quarters. And the offense they ran tried to help the defense as much as possible by churning clock, getting first downs. Here's what I think I'm confident about. One, Billy Kemp will have a good season. It'll be the third year in a row that a transfer receiver has been the top pass catcher, and that's what I'm predicting. Billy Kemp will be the number one receiver.
Yep.
And he'll make some plays for him, even though he's 5'9" and not 6'1" like Trey Palmer or Samari Toure. Billy Kemp will make some plays. Two, the offensive line will be decent, and it'll be deep enough that if they get an injury, they'll be able to deal with it. So they'll be able to rotate 6 or 7 guys. The third thing I think is that Jeff Sims will be either the number 1 or the number 2 rusher on the team. He'll be over 400 yards. I don't know how much he's going to get. He's probably not getting up into the 6 or the 700s, but he'll be over 400. And there will definitely be 3 or 4 or 5 games this year where he is the leading rusher.
Man, is that what you want, though? I don't know if that's what you're looking for. I mean, he has the ability.
Yeah,
is that a good sign?
I'm not saying that's what you want, but I do think that's what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
And I'll just give you an example, brief example. It was going to be really hard for them to beat Illinois with Casey Thompson. And the reason it was going to be hard for them to beat Illinois is a man-to-man pressure defense that covers tight and brings pressure, and Casey Thompson couldn't get away from that. And Casey was good in some areas that I think Jeff Sims won't be, but the one thing that you've got when you play a team like Illinois, Jeff Sims will run the football. Adrian Martinez ran the football in 2021. Remember, he had the 75-yard touchdown? Right. You will run the ball as a quarterback against Illinois' defense.
Mm-hmm.
They need that element. There's other teams that are going to play man. They're probably going to play soft, or I'm sorry, not man. They're going to play zone. They're going to play soft zone. They're going to play cover 2. And they're going to be like, complete 5 passes in a row on us. Go for it. And that's the area where I think Jeff Sims will be challenged. Is can he orchestrate 12 and 13 play drives against Minnesota? Minnesota's not going to give you much. They'll bend a little, but they won't break. Minnesota's going to play coverage. They're going to trust their men up front to get to the quarterback, and they're not going to let Jeff Sims beat him with his legs. That'll be the question mark. Is can you run the football with your running back? And if you can't do that, are you able to complete short to intermediate throws that get you first downs? If they're able to do those things, I think they can win 6 or 7 games because their defense is going to be decent. And I think they're going to, they're going to play some teams that they can beat. Let's just be really honest about it. I don't like playing that game because Nebraska can't count any win in the bucket. But I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what Maryland is on November 11th. And I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what Northwestern's going to be. And I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what Purdue's going to be. Purdue's not going to be very good. Michigan State probably isn't going to be very good either. There's a 4-game window in there where you can, in theory, win all 4 of them. You can also lose 3 of them. So, I think the offense needs to be as good as it can be when it really, really matters. I do think the first 2 games are important, but that 4-game season after the bye week, that's where it's going to be. That's where it's going to be made or lost. In those 4 games, you're going to find out if this is a team that could go to a bowl, or if this is a team that's going to have to wait until next year.
And I think by that point too, you need to have an identity, right? Like if you say Iowa's offense, you know what that looks like, whatever the personnel is. If you say Minnesota's offense, what Wisconsin's offense has been, like, you know what it is because that's what they do. And I would, how many years in a row now have we talked about, like, well, what's Nebraska trying to do? What are they good at? And they've been all over the board.
Yeah.
And I think I get the sense that's going to continue, at least early on this year, because when you hear Matt Rule talk about the backup quarterback situation, I think that it's still Nebraska sort of adjusting its offense to whomever is taking the ball. Hey, if we're down 2 scores, Chubba Purdy's the guy. If we're trying to run the ball more in a backup situation, Heinrich Harburg's the guy. Jeff Sims has a skill set that's hard to replicate with somebody else. And so that's one thing I still am looking at is like, can Nebraska get to a point this year offensively where when you say Nebraska offense, you know what that looks like. We knew what it looked like in the 90s. We knew what it looked like in the 2000s. I'll be curious if they can establish something as this season goes along.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it'll be a running game, a little quarterback run, and we'll throw to the tight end. I don't know if it'll be anything like last year or not. I mean, we'll have to see. But I'll leave you with this. I'm not leaving, but I'll this will be the last thing I say about this. What helps offense? Field position. How do you do that? Special teams. I think watch special teams, whether they're able to help offense this year. I think the offense is going to need all help it can get. And, you punt and you cover and you pin somebody down. You go 3 and out, and then you get the ball at midfield. That's huge. You get a nice punt return into the 40 or 50 yard range. That's huge. Every little thing is going to have to help. They're all going to have to help each other this season. No area is going to be so strong or so good that they're going to carry the team. I think all 3 outfits are going to have to work in sync. And again, manage the game. Onside kick, Northwestern, Ireland, not managing the game. Don't do that. So have a feel, an awareness of where the game is and what your team needs. That I think I feel good about this staff being able to do that. I feel good about the staff. We've had a couple staffs here over the years. Year one didn't really know what to do with things. They were learning on the run. I feel good that this staff knows. So I think, like I said, I think that the strength of this team, I think, is going to be the staff.
We'll see. That'll be interesting to watch for sure. I think they've got a good, strong staff. Do they have the best staff in the Big Ten West? I don't know. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the division. Unless anyone here believes that the Big Ten West champion is going to win the Big Ten,
hasn't happened yet.
I don't. Then I think we can agree that we're talking about the team that's going to play in Indianapolis for the Big Ten title, but they're not going to win it. And we can talk briefly about the 3 teams that are contending on the East side, but I want to talk more about the West. None of us believe Nebraska is going to win the Big Ten West at this moment.
Correct.
No.
So I don't know what teams that leaves for you guys to contend, but just off the top of your heads, because I didn't give you this topic beforehand. Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota. I'm leaving out Purdue. They're not going to win the Big Ten West. No. Which one of those 4 jumps out at you?
We'll start with the quarterbacks. I always start with the quarterbacks, and who's Minnesota's quarterback?
Ethan Kelly at Mannix.
Who's Wisconsin's quarterback?
Tanner Mordecai.
SMU. But who are they? Who's Illinois' quarterback?
Ole Miss transfer.
Right. Iowa's quarterback? Michigan transfer. Yeah. So which one of those is going to step up? And you don't know. So you try to pick a division. I think you start with the quarterback. Iowa's always a good place to start. So is Wisconsin. But will Iowa's defense be as good? It'll certainly be good. Will it be as good as last year? When they really could have used a quarterback like him, and I mean, so I don't know. I don't know what to. I'd go Iowa, Wisconsin. Minnesota hasn't until they do it. I'm not going to pick them. Illinois, they got the coach, they got the system,
the D-line.
I just feel like whoever quarterback, whichever one of those 2 transfers plays the best.
I think it's Iowa. I think, Cade McNamara can get the job done. Their schedule lines up pretty well. I believe they miss Ohio State and Michigan.
They do.
This year, so that's always huge. I personally feel like Wisconsin's been overrated somewhat. I mean, Luke Fickell's a heck of a coach, but it's still year 1, and Wisconsin was still a hot mess by the end of last season. So to expect them to just bounce back, rehauling a lot of their DNA and to contend in year one, I don't see it. So I think it's Iowa in some ways because of just sort of process of elimination. And Tom, you said their defense maybe can't be much better. Their offense can't be much worse. So if they can actually score a little bit more, I think that's the clear favorite in the West.
If Illinois had its quarterback back, I might pick the Illini. They have the best receiving core back. They have the best front seven back, but they have weaknesses. The offensive line is relatively new. They don't have a quarterback. Luke Altmaier's never played, really. He played a little bit at Ole Miss, but not really. So he's starting afresh. I'm kind of between Wisconsin and Iowa. I think I'm going to lean Wisconsin. I think the reason I say that is related to the players that Iowa lost. I think they lost Jack Campbell, and they lost Kyle Van Ness, and they lost another high-end player in Riley Moss, I think. On the offensive side of the ball, they lost Sam Laporta, who's a really good player, and lost a couple of receivers. I don't know if Cade McNamara can make that up. I do have them second. I will have Wisconsin first. I think it comes down to the Iowa-Wisconsin game, and I think Wisconsin wins it. Wisconsin, I think, has got a lot of good players. So I think the question mark that I have there is, can they get this offense to win the games that Wisconsin always used to win, like against Purdue, like against Iowa? I mean, they had a lot of success over the years against Iowa. Or is it too much of an air raid scheme? Because Iowa can take apart an air raid. They're pretty good at that. But I think Wisconsin's ability to compress Iowa's defense into this tiny box and then punch a hole through it and make big running plays was the difference in those games. But I'm going to lean Wisconsin a little bit, and then I think I have Minnesota third. Trust that program a lot to be exactly what it is. But Illinois might be there. You just never know.
So the difference to you, what's the difference between Wisconsin and Nebraska? Is it just player talent when you're talking about a new head coach, overhauling systems? Is that all it is, that you would say Wisconsin's that much farther ahead than Nebraska is player talent?
I think they've got a little bit more developed talent. I think their offensive line is better. I think that they've just got more seasoning there. There's things that Nebraska hasn't proven that Wisconsin's offensive line has. I think their defense is going to remain relatively intact. In other words, they're going to run a slightly different scheme, but they're going to do a lot of the same things. So I think they're going to keep it intact. You want to know the real biggest difference?
Let's hear it.
Track record. I mean, track records in the last 10 years. Nebraska hasn't beaten Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's won a lot of football. And yeah, they fired a guy. But it's kind of like asking me, a little bit, like, well, what do I think of Nebraska in 2004 and some other team that had a new coach that year? I mean, I lean a little bit on Nebraska winning some games that in 2004 that they just won because they remembered how to win, and I think Nebraska has to learn how to win, and Wisconsin remembers.
Yeah,
I think that's worth something. I do think they got a good head coach too. Like I don't.
No doubt.
The Purdue situation, I think he could be a very nice head coach eventually. He's never done this before. It's really like you're going to get in a game, and here's what's going to happen. This happens with defensive coordinators who become coaches all the time. They get in a game, the offense isn't doing what they want it to do, and they immediately want to change the offense. It's like, okay, we're calling everything off. We're not going to do this anymore. The other team's scoring too many points. So now we're gonna go into our shell and we're gonna run the ball. And Bo Pelini did that for several years, and he ran off. I mean, he didn't run off Sean Watson, but like that was one of the issues. And then he would always throttle Tim Beck down because he got annoyed with the offense, the defense not being exposed and all this other stuff. That's what defensive coordinators do, and Walters will do it at least once this year, where it's going to be like, all right, well. We're not scoring, so we're going to go into a shell and we're going to run the ball 45 times so our defense can feel better about itself. And it'll hurt them. They're going to go 3-9 or 4-8. They're going to have a hard year, and he could be very good eventually, but he is not ready yet. So
Okay.
That's my take
All right.
on them. Okay. Anything jump out at you about anything Rule has said in the last however many days in terms of football. We got through the Big Ten West. We got through the offense.
I mean, I don't think he's had an availability yet where it's just been like, I already knew all that. You know,
yeah.
honestly, we had a lot of those with Frost.
Oh, sure.
And I don't know that we've had a single one. I can't think of any where I haven't, taken some sort of.
I'm not sure Frost was always discovering
insight from
things
it.
to himself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He had kind of a bad attitude.
I'd push it back all the way to Frank. I don't know that every time Rule talks, like last Saturday, he's hot and steamy and walking out the field in all black and comes up to the mic and gives us a good 20 minutes of stuff that's better than anybody the last 4 coaches ever gave us.
For sure.
So, and in a just sort of a matter-of-fact way.
Yeah.
So what I love about him so far, he talks football.
He does.
And there's not promises. There's not this. There's no hype. And we haven't heard much about hype this month from people. And it's just basic football stuff. And he talks little things. If you're a Nebraska fan, you get eat all that stuff up. It's great stuff. And we try to give it. We try to give all of it to you. So, but yeah, every time, what's he going to do Friday? Every time. So, yeah, I agree. And that's what to me has been fascinating about this camp is it's been a X and O sort of a attention to detail type of camp and all the statements.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw the third episode of that A Look In that Nebraska put out last night.
That I did.
I know you did. We were texting about it a little bit. But like the part in the most recent drop where he's talking with the guys on the field about redshirting and this idea like, hey, here's your presumed starting offense. Now who's a senior in eligibility, and those guys walk off the field, and there's like
Jeff Sims ran off the field.
There's like 4 guys left on the field. And it's like, okay, so now that's the next wave of guys in, and it's not about talent, it's about perfecting your craft, and you can do that on the scout team, and so many great players redshirted. Like just the teacher side of him. And we've talked about how he can turn a phrase and present things to people that just sort of sticks a little bit more. And it just feels like that was just another great example. We're into that phase now where, okay, they're going to drop a depth chart on Friday, and we're going to make a lot out of it and dissect it. And there'll be guys who redshirt, and like he was ahead of the curve there and being sure to tell those guys, look, it's okay to redshirt. It's an opportunity to keep grinding. Like just stuff like that. It just there's always a purpose behind every little thing, and the way he says it continues to impress me.
Yeah, I thought he was going to, when Jeff Sims ran off, I thought he was going like, Jeff, come back. Like, not that Jeff Sims can't play in the NFL, but like, I think they'd like to have.
How
Jeff
about we
Sims
have you for 24
just
as well?
2 years?
Yeah.
Hey, Chubba, Heinrich, I'm sorry. Jeff, come on. But a lot of guys ran off the field who are not like technically seniors, but I get what they were doing. We saw what the first team defense was, at least in practice last week. Mm-hmm. It was Nash Hutmaker, Ty Robinson, Cam Linhard, Nick Henrich, MJ Sherman, Luke Reimer, Quentin Newsom, and Malcolm Hartzog, and the safeties were Deshaun Singleton, Omar Brown, and Isaac Gifford.
How about that, Deshaun Singleton?
And then on the radio last night, Matt Rule said the thing about Deshaun Singleton making the really big jump. Now, I will say, and you can remember me saying this a long time back, I thought Deshaun Singleton's tape was outstanding out of JUCO. This is a guy that was a 6'3", 200-pound safety who could really seriously run with receivers across the field, 10 yards downfield, crossing routes. He was running with them like he was a man guy. So there was some things about his game that I thought were really impressive. He got here. I think he impressed Travis Fisher. But then everybody knows what happened. Like, those guys, Fisher was not really in charge of the defense or even really in charge of the safeties after the third or fourth game.
Right.
I mean, he was out. So they kind of did what they did. I do think at times in the safety backfield last year there was a little bit of a liability. I don't think they were as fast as they could be. I think they're going to get faster and longer and more athletic. So that was something that jumped out at me. I think he usually has something interesting to say. I was struck about his radio comment praising Minnesota as much as he did. He said, they play the way that Nebraska used to play for many years, and it's the way we want to play. And I thought that was a very respectful toward PJ Fleck.
Well,
And I know what he means by it. He's, the 90s Huskers were better than Minnesota today, but I thought it was very respectful.
I think he's a little bit of a straight shooter, and I think that's good. It's good to have to play games with with opponents and just tell like it is. And there's a lot to like from Minnesota.
Right. The previous coaching staff did not care or respect
It was
Minnesota
all
very
about
much.
personalities and egos. I mean, that's not what this is all about.
Yeah. It was interesting just to kind of hear him last night talk about a few of the things. This week we have a press conference on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that'll preview the Minnesota football game, Rule players. And then Monday we have Marcus Satterfield and players. And then I think then the Rule on Tuesday, and then they depart.
And that's it. Yeah.
We will have another podcast before Volleyball Day in America, and we will talk about how cool that's going to be. But next week's going to be really interesting for Husker athletics because they're going to have a celebration unlike any other in school history. And then they're going to have a really important football game. Like, they're not playing Illinois State. If they win that game, the buzz around this state a week from, 7 days from now is going to be, it's going to be palpable. I'm not saying they're going to win the game. In fact, I'm probably going to predict they don't. But if they do, everything that's happened in the previous 9 months will hit an overdrive. And Matt Rule may have a new challenge.
Right.
Which is convincing his players that they're not all that in a bag of chips.
Well, I put it out on Twitter too. Like, if they beat Minnesota? What do you compare that to in the last 6 years? Because they've lost 20 whatever straight against ranked opponents, going back to Oregon 2016. But since then, Iowa last year, probably the biggest win since 2017. Yeah. Michigan State 2018. The list is very short. This immediately vaults up there as one of the biggest wins in the last 7 years.
Until the next one.
No question.
Sure.
Until they lose to Colorado, then, well, saying, you have to add up the importance. Yeah, you can take the snapshot and say, yeah, this is incredible. Everybody's fired up, but then you got to keep going.
Right.
If you don't go to a bowl game, what does it mean?
Which one do you think the fan base would rather Nebraska win, Colorado or Minnesota?
Colorado.
I agree.
Dion and the old Buff deal and one for old time's sake.
Yep.
A lot of people deny Colorado is up there in their head, but it's there, and I always see it when Colorado loses a game. Yes, they're always paying attention. So
yep. I agree, totally agree.
I think it's Minnesota's not there, maybe never be there. I don't think anybody in the Big Ten's there. I don't think there's anybody that's that emotional. Iowa kind of getting there, but Nebraska hasn't beaten them yet. I don't feel like it's. I just don't feel like the games haven't meant. The Colorado Nebraska game used to mean everything.
Yeah.
On different levels.
Yeah.
That was a manhood game for even fans. We don't like you, and you're making fun of us.
Mm-hmm.
All their cheerleaders are cows. They don't have indoor plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
All the columnists wrote this stuff. It was all on talk radio. It was this was before Twitter, but yeah, normally, a classy columnist would write this crap.
Yeah.
And it all started with the head coach, and the media there fed into it. And it became, I've never seen a series, and we can talk about this in 2 weeks, but a series that was more about that stuff than it was never about football. Nobody ever talked football.
Right, it was mean-spirited.
Nobody ever talked about
for sure
the X and O game. What we always did with everybody else.
Yeah.
Colorado was just like, here come the farmers against the hippies and the cool kids, and we're so much cooler than you, and it was outrageous, and I got sick of it. I got just sick of everything. So, but the games, you go back and look at the games, really, really good games.
Yeah, they were.
But
Yeah,
so
the players clearly wanted to win.
that's for 2 weeks. But
No, that's good. No, I agree. I think Colorado, one of the reasons, it's for all the things you mentioned, but also this, that fans' expectation of winning at Minnesota is actually kind of low. Like if Nebraska loses 20-17, everybody would be like, I don't know. But then the expectation to beat Colorado, based on the fact that it's brand new and they have a completely new team, is pretty high.
Right.
And it's fed by this bitterness of losing all these games to Colorado a couple years ago and all this other stuff. So, clear now, they're both important. Now, if you were just looking like straight up, like which game matters more than another, it'd be the Minnesota game because it's for the Big Ten standings. But that's not how Nebraska fans think.
I really
Right.
think the first
I wonder
two
if
games,
Rule understands that. I think he will understand it, but
Yeah, I don't know.
Tends to.
He will, because he was a fan in the 90s, so he is going to, in 2 weeks, he'll be able to say, I remember this, and this from the 90s. He will be able to say that, because I think he will have recalled.
He'll say he watched those games on Black Friday and
Sure.
so on and so forth. Yep.
His freshman year at Penn State was 94, and Penn State had a great team that went undefeated, and the reason that Nebraska won both national titles that year is because they beat Colorado. And they beat them so decisively.
But Penn State didn't play anybody like Colorado.
They didn't, that's right.
I
Exactly.
argue that with the Penn State people all the time. And and also, Nebraska won it because they beat Miami in the Orange Bowl.
Right.
And I know that wasn't a great Miami offense, unbelievable defense.
Yeah.
But they beat him in the Orange Bowl, and Tom hadn't won it. It was time to give Tom the deal. And Penn State beat Oregon.
They beat Oregon, which was not Miami in the Orange Bowl.
That's like Michigan beating Washington State that year. It's like, okay. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I was watching that game is on Big Ten Network all the time. I love watching that 94 Colorado game. And it was a bloodbath. It was a hard-hitting, old-fashioned, not many guys walking off the field type of game. And wasn't a lot of scoring, some early, but nobody Penn State played was like Colorado.
No. So I'm guessing he remembers that. I'm guessing that Rule remembers what that rivalry meant, and we'll talk about it in 2 weeks. Okay, so the last thing we're going to get to is Nebraska volleyball. And we're going to do a little bit of a short season preview here for them. We talked about them at the red-white match last week, but Evan and I will talk just a little bit about them.
I could talk.
Well, if you want, I'd love for you to
I went
talk
to the
about
scrimmage.
it. You did go to the scrimmage.
Absolutely.
I would love it. By all means, I'd love for you to stick around.
It was electric because it was even. Usually that thing is it's a sweep because the one team is better than the other.
Best red-white ever.
But it was because it was so. There were shots coming from all angles, from all players, great plays, defense, blocks, kills, just rockets. I mean, it was like, hey, the young kids can play, and they don't really care right now, and everything's open, and that's the feel I get is everything's open, and everything's on the table. Everybody is going to be able to play. Now they haven't been to Wisconsin or Minnesota yet, or some of those places, but they've got talent. And it's fun. And I don't know that they've always had. It seems like it's more spread out, more balanced. But John Cook's in a good mood. He's always in a good mood. He's got the stadium deal, and
He likes his team, doesn't he?
he likes his team, and he likes to be the hunter. And right now, they're the hunter. They're not number one. They are clearly chasing Wisconsin. Wisconsin has all the swag right now. They won the league 3 or 4 years in a row. They've been to the Final Four. They won it. More recently, there's even more Wisconsin players on the Nebraska's on Omaha's Pro League team. There's more Wisconsin players than Nebraska players on there. What did that tell you? So, Because there's another pro team too. But I don't know, guys. I mean, I think it's another great year. The stadium thing is a great kickoff to it. And keep an eye on a possible special guest showing up next Wednesday night.
Oh, I like that.
Special guest who just had a parade in his honor. Keep an eye on maybe that might be in the works.
Okay.
All right.
That would be very cool.
A podcast drop there.
No, I like that. That might. I'll tell you what. That would be quite a cheer for that special guest. That special guest deserves the opportunity to hear 95,000 people at once.
That'd be pretty cool.
Oh, would it ever? Yeah, that would be for sure. So here's the top 10 of the AVCA preseason poll, and Tom mentioned that Nebraska is the hunter, not the hunted. Texas, Wisconsin, Stanford, Louisville, Nebraska, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Penn State, Oregon, Kentucky. That is the top 10. Nebraska plays 5 of those teams during the season. They play Wisconsin, obviously, Stanford, Minnesota, Penn State. Penn State's ranking surprises me, but then I realized they got Ohio State center. And Kentucky. To go over the schedule very quickly here for people who don't remember it, because I feel like a lot of, and rightfully so, the majority of the conversation about this upcoming season has been about the match on the 30th.
No doubt.
This weekend, Nebraska starts. They play Utah State, Lipscomb, and SMU. I have no idea which of those teams is the best. UNO, which took Nebraska to 5 sets 2 years ago. At K-State, Creighton. And Creighton is, I don't know what they're ranked, 18th.
They're always right there.
It'd be really
They're right
good
there.
again. Yeah.
Creighton, Long Beach State, at Stanford, Kentucky. That's their non-conference schedule. So the biggest matches in the non-conference are Creighton, Stanford, and Kentucky.
Yep.
Then they start the conference season, and it starts tough. Ohio State, Minnesota, Purdue. That's the first 3. Those are tough. At Indiana. Then you have Michigan State, Michigan State, Penn State, at Northwestern, and then Wisconsin, Maryland, Rutgers. And then in November, it gets hard. At Penn State, at Rutgers. Rutgers isn't very good, but you still got to go there. Northwestern, Illinois, Michigan, at Iowa. Iowa sucks. And then to end the season on Thanksgiving weekend, at Wisconsin, at Minnesota. With the Big Ten title on the line, they have to play on the road. And they have to play in what I think most people would consider the second and third hardest venues in the Big Ten after Nebraska.
That happened a couple of years ago,
It
too,
did.
they ended down there. I like that. I like the heavyweights ending together. Last year, it was at home. I remember watching
Same matches.
Nebraska,
Yep.
Wisconsin in the Iowa press box. I remember watching that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel
The
like
busiest weekend of
It's just
our
good
lives,
theater.
wasn't it?
well, yeah, we had a head coach the next day, and
Unbelievable.
I just feel like the Big Ten now is not just about the Iowa or volleyball here, the Nebraska-Wisconsin match. It's about who's going to beat or who's going to lose to Illinois or Ohio State. Who's going to lose to Purdue at home? These little second wave schools in the Big Ten are getting really good. It's a deep league, so you not only have to worry about the heavyweight fights, it's the other ones. You can't slip up.
Well, and the depth will be interesting, too. We talk about the freshman class. Like, there aren't a lot of programs and a lot of coaches, maybe, that can navigate this depth of top-end talent. I'll be really curious to see how that shakes out, because I think we've seen it in the past few years where Nebraska was talented, but maybe it didn't always – the players didn't always totally jive with each other. You kind of got that sense. And Nebraska's best teams had all that. They had the star players. They had the support – younger support players that sort of would ascend later in their careers. It'll be fascinating to see, like, where someone like Harper Murray fit in as a freshman, like, as talented as she is.
I really feel like what I felt last Saturday night is going to be huge. That's energy and excitement and this early momentum and adrenaline. I feel like at the end of the last year, Nebraska was just on fumes.
Yeah,
and
injuries.
I think the COVID seniors, they've been around for so long. It just felt like they got banged up and they lost a. Was it Mackenzie Knuckles that injured in Wisconsin or some? I just felt like they were It felt like they were kind of done. They were just like, well, I just feel like they needed this new wave of energy and talent to come in, and okay, it's a little bit like starting over, but you can catch up in a hurry. And I just feel like the energy level is going to be up this year, and they were certainly very good last year, but it's time to reload.
Nebraska has not been a number one seed in a regional, excluding 2020. I don't know what the 2020 thing was in the bubble here. It doesn't matter. They haven't been a number one seed in a regional since 2016. They've won a national championship since then in 2017. But if you go back and look at it, generally speaking, teams that lose more than 4 matches, with the exception of, I think, the Wisconsin team in 2019, are not a number one seed in a regional. So basically what you have to do is you have to say you get about 4 losses. That's it. And why this is important is because, Nebraska has when you have to go on the road for that second weekend, you can get through it. Nebraska certainly did a couple years ago. They beat Illinois, and then they beat Texas on Texas's floor. But it's harder. It's harder to do. And it's hard to win national championships when you're playing on the road like that. And so the goal, I think, this year especially is find a way to get a number one seed, which means that based on the schedule that I just laid out, they got to find a way to win all but 3-4 matches. And you probably got to win the Big Ten, because there was the one year when Wisconsin had 6 losses, they won the Big Ten. And Nebraska was the number 2 seed in Wisconsin's region. And it was more about, hey, the Badgers were better. They seem like they're really good. Wisconsin has a great transfer from Northwestern who's terrific, and they got a lot of other players back too. So they're going to be tough to beat.
But I like this program, Sam, as an underdog. I mean, how many times have we seen Cook go to the Final Four through Austin, Seattle? There was another time they were somewhere on the road. That may be how it has to happen.
Yeah,
it's going to be hard to get that number one where you're hosting. It's going to be hard with this kind of team. But they can be the kind of team at the end of the year that goes on the road and surprises somebody, knocks off a number one seed.
For sure. I think that's entirely possible. Key storylines for this year. Setter battle, yep. Bergen Riley against Kendi Orr. I think it'll be Riley eventually, but we'll see if they rotate it early. How much the freshmen play. So Harper Murray appears to be... Is that first time you'd seen Harper Murray play? That's pretty special stuff. She's great.
It's fun.
Yeah, she's really going to be something at Nebraska. She's an outside hitter along with Allie Batenhorst and Lindsey Krause. I think there's a rotation there. And then there's who's going to be your middle blockers. And I was listening to Lauren Cook, who was on Jack Mitchell's show down in Lincoln, and she said she thought that the second middle blocker would be Andy Jackson. Over Maggie Mendelson, who, has been there a year. But
they struggled a little bit with that in the scrimmage.
Yeah.
They did that. That's something they're going to have to work on, but it's August. And they're
young. Is.
So, it'll just has to be there in November.
It does. So I think they're going to have kind of a fun team. I think the question marks that I have going into it is their offense going to be better? I was listening to Kelly Hunter talk on that new podcast, The Dig. She said that they talked to the U.S. women's national team setter, the U.S. men's national team setter, and the backup setter on the U.S. men's national team this spring about how to improve their offense. Now, Kelly Hunter knows all those people, so that probably helps. But they want to get back, I think, to playing better offense. In other words, just terminating balls, scoring, and they have the best defense in the country, but I think they want to get better on offense.
You got to keep your defense, so you can't
Right.
you can't give anything away from defense.
Right.
To do that, because like he said, everybody plays offense now. It's the teams that play defense that are
Lexi
gonna win.
Rodriguez makes up for a lot of that.
And they have the best. They generally have the best defense in the country.
Yeah.
Hunter mentioned that, and then I think they're trying to figure out what they can implement, and what they can't, and then here we go.
Sports, finally, we're a week away.
I'm glad.
It's time.
Boys.
It's beyond time.
It's been a long summer, hasn't it, guys? I feel like it's been a long summer.
It's been so long I'm missing the College World Series at this point, just for some competition. Let's get this thing going.
The College World Series was the best thing about the summer, sports-wise, for sure. But other than that, it's been a long time since I feel like I've covered a Nebraska football game. So much. So many rural pressers. Okay, that is our Pick Six podcast for this week. For Tom and Evan, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening. We'll be back Tuesday to preview the Huskers.